Stay true to who you are. Listen to that inner voice. As April mentioned, have that giddiness, that joy. Don't be afraid to step out that box, because you can definitely reinvent your life at any time. And just really follow your heart, listening to the Word of God, and you'll get there. Wherever your dreams are taking you, you will get there. Just have the confidence, have the faith, and proceed every day with joy.
Introducing The Vixen Voice, a podcast for ambitious women entrepreneurs ready to move into their feminine essence, live their truth, and unlock their full potential. I'm your host, April Roberts, and each week I'll be interviewing inspiring women who decided to take a leap of faith to pursue their dream. Women who believe that they were born for something bigger. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of The Vixen Voice. As you know, I'm excited for every guest that I have on here. We personally invite every woman here, so we have a relationship. We already know they are fantastic before having them with us. But today I'm very excited because we have Cynthia Pensiero-DeFazio. And Cynthia and I go back a few years, I think, 2019, 2020, which is a lot in today's world, right?
It is. It definitely is, April. And I'm so excited to be here with you.
I love it. And here's why I'm excited to have Cynthia. So when I had my TV show for my financial company, Cynthia was my last host that I had. So she actually hosted me on the TV show and questioned me. And today I get to question her. So we're going to have a lot of fun and just chit chat.
True role reversal.
I know, it's so fun. I can't wait to see you as guest. I know you're a pro at this, so I'm not worried at all, but it'll be fun to have you as the guest instead of having to steer the ship, which Cynthia's fantastic at what she does, and she was always great with me. So Cynthia is a national TV host for Magellan Financial. As I said, for myself and for, I don't do that anymore, but she has advisors across the country that she does that for. She's also a 24-year licensed realtor, and if you follow her on social, she seems to sell and help people buy a lot of houses. So I love how you celebrate your clients. It's really beautiful. She was also Mrs. Ohio in 1996, and she was Mrs. America in the same year. So Cynthia, welcome.
April, thank you so much. And again, I am so honored to be on this podcast with you. Thank you for inviting me. And I just can't wait to hear what you want to ask me and what questions you have, and sharing just my point of view, my life story, my passion for helping others with the entire audience that's listening and watching.
Oh, I love it so much. Thank you, Cynthia. Yeah. So Cynthia and I ran into each other at an event in Nashville a couple of months ago. And I was like, oh, I have to have you on the show. So here we are. I know our schedules conflicted, but life is funny like that. I just love it running. And I don't think we ever hung out outside of the TV studio before I saw you at that event, correct?
Never, because we were so busy with the TV show. You would come in and we would do your 6 shows, and then you would go, and then we would have to rotate to someone else. So we've never had a lot of time to really spend together. And I've enjoyed following you on social media and just our friendship that has grown through the years. I'm just so honored to know you, and I'm so happy for everything that you are achieving, and most importantly, just empowering women. It's just an amazing thing that you're doing, April.
Oh, well, thank you, Cynthia. And I know you believe in the same. So we're going to dig in today to hear your story and how you love supporting community collaboration and support between women. And I'll tell you the other thing that I am giddy about is we are not regulated on this show, so we don't have to watch what we say.
I love it. I love it. Well, which journey would you like to hear about first? Do you want to hear about my real estate career, being Mrs. Ohio, then Mrs. America, my marriage, my child? What would you like to hear?
Great question. What I'd love to start with is obviously we have this beautiful, multifaceted woman sitting in front of us, or maybe you're listening or watching us on YouTube. And what I'm super curious about is, could you share one or two stories in your life that you feel were pivotal to who you are today?
Great questions. Most definitely when a friend of mine encouraged me to enter the Mrs. Ohio pageant. It wasn't anything that I had even thought about or, prepared for. And so I said, you know what, why not? That would force me to really be the best version of myself. But I got ready in like a 2-week period of time, April. So I remember just grabbing my gown off of the rack at Dillard's and hoping that it was going to be what I needed. So the first year that I competed was 1995. And I made the top 5. And I thought, gosh, if I did this, with just a short period of time, then what if I really spend the whole year getting ready? So I did that and then went back in 96 and won Mrs. Ohio and then went on to win the nationals. But that one comment from a friend inspired me to take a direction that I didn't even think about before she mentioned it. And so that is really pivotal. And so often we get that kind of support and guidance from people. You can call them God winks. I like to call them God winks, because without her encouraging me to even try, I can't tell you that would be something that I would have ever gone after. And so I think for me personally, April, the reason that I feel so passionate about how women support and encourage one another was most definitely my experience through the Mrs. America pageant. People have an interesting perspective when it comes to pageants. Either you really like them or you're not crazy about them. But what I have found out is that overall, across the board, women are supportive. They're encouraging. They want to see you do well. They want to see you succeed. And the year that I won, all of the judges were all former Mrs. Americas, which I was exceptionally honored to be chosen by that group, because that's the only year, it was the 20-year anniversary of the pageant, where the entire judging panel was Mrs. Americas. So that was pretty cool. And then, but the best part after I was crowned Mrs. America would have been the video by watching all of the ladies around me that genuinely hugged me and came up and they were crying. They were excited that I won, because I was passionate about getting to know each and every contestant as much as possible in that 2-week period that we were there in Vegas competing. So I went to a different table each day and I introduced myself and talked a little bit about my life. I got to know their lives. And so friendships were formed, because so often I think what happens is we cluster together with those that we're comfortable with, but we don't venture out to meet new people. And so it really encouraged me to just take a step in a different direction and leave nationals knowing that I would have a friend in each and every state across the country. So definitely a pivotal moment by one person saying, hey, you should go out for Mrs. America, just try it. Or Mrs. Ohio, just try it. I'm like, okay. Right? It's amazing what God will do by using people around you.
Totally. And I love that story. I have to tell you, you are actually the second Mrs. America I've had on the show, because my friend Lacey Pruitt was also Mrs. America, but she was a lifetime pageant woman, as a girl and as a woman. And then that was like her final hurrah. And actually, she's written 2 books on stepping off the stage and just the pressure of being in the pageant world and being on, and how she had to find herself. So I love that you have the opposite story, that someone just said like, hey, why don't you do this? And you said, why not? We need to say why not more in our life. Right? Wouldn't you agree, Cynthia?
April, I would 100% agree. I mean, there's no time like the present for doing something different, capturing your dream. Why not? Exactly. Try something new. Step outside that box. We so often, like I said earlier, get so comfortable and we stay with what we know. But so often, if you really listen to what your heart is telling you, it's never too late to reinvent your life. It's never too late to try something new. It can all begin again. Every day is a new beginning.
Well, and I agree. You never know the beauty of what's coming. And you and I chatted a little bit before coming on board, and you talked about the power of prayer and God in your life. And what I've been focused on this year is surrendering every day, because I realized I'm very good at surrendering when the chips are down, right? Like I can just hand over and trust. But I wanted to practice surrendering the good things and also just daily life. And it's actually it's very difficult to do. And so at first I was really good every day, just surrender, surrender, surrender. And then February hit and a couple of things got me off track and I quit surrendering. And then 3 weeks later, I was like, why did life just get so hard? And then I was like, oh yeah, I'm forgetting to surrender. And so I started again and everything became fine again. And it's not that I had so many more problems when I wasn't surrendering versus when I was. It's just how you go about them and like the trust. So I love that you were just like, let me go do this and see what happens. So I met this week, since I live in Nashville, I went to a networking event. And of course, there's a country singer at the networking event, only in Nashville, right? So she was singing. And so I have this habit, being a speaker myself and just being respectful. You know, I like to go thank all of the speakers after events if I can. Sometimes you can't, like, hey, thank you so much. I appreciate you opening up. And so she and another woman there, we got to talking and she was just sharing her story about being on The Voice. And she had a similar plan to you. And she was very young. She was like, I want to celebrate everyone's journey during this time. So instead of it being stressful and competitive for her, just like you, she walked away with all these friends and support and supporting others. And, you know, I just think it's part of the American culture to be competitive and be the best. And that can kind of be a beautiful thing. But I feel that the world has shifted and it's time for more collaboration over competition. So, you know, we talked about the pageant world. Of course, you're a realtor as well, which in my experience, being the client of a realtor, it can be a very cutthroat environment as well. I remember my realtor getting yelled at by another realtor because we didn't accept their offer. And I was like, what? He yelled at you? Like, who yells at you? I was like, we're not surprised. Yeah. So I'm sure you deal with that a lot. And it led to me getting invited to coach a group of realtors on setting boundaries and like how to handle these conversations. So how do you overcome that competitive environment in your career, Cynthia?
So I love that you just said boundaries. And another thing I wanted to also say is my word for the year was neutralize. Like last year I chose balance. And I tried to stay with it, but then I kind of lost balance. And I'm like, okay, next year I need a better word, one that I can really stay with. And so I chose neutralize for the reasons that you just mentioned, because in real estate specifically, it can be very emotional on the residential side. The commercial side is totally different. I don't do the commercial side. But with residential specifically, there are so many different personality types that come into play that I've learned through the course of my career that when someone says something to you, like it's not necessarily personally directed to you. It's usually something else that's bothering that person. And so I try to respond versus react, and I neutralize my opinion on something. And that has helped me so much with especially the real estate piece. But you're right. I mean, I have gone, you know, head to head with other agents over listings. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to be any different than who I am. What you see is what you get. There's no facade. I'm genuinely caring and serving to people. And if that client wants to work with me, great. But if I lose them to another agent, I have to respect that it's God's will and that there's a reason that they're lined up with that person. So I have a really different perspective. I don't get stressed about it at all.
Yeah, I love it. And that's basically what I'm saying when I say I surrender, because what's interesting is I found when I bring up the topic of surrender, there are a number of women who get triggered by that word because of maybe an experience they had in their life, or they feel it's being at a lower power level than someone else. But for me, it's exactly what you just talked about. Like, I just trust that God's going to bring me the best outcome. And sometimes I don't know what the best outcome is for me. And sometimes he has something greater planned than I can even imagine. I mean, think about when you said, what if? Like, when you said, what if, you probably did not imagine being crowned Mrs. America, right? You just thought, hey, this will be a cool experience.
100%. That's how I felt. I just wanted to have the best experience. And again, like you mentioned, surrendering to God, to the Lord. And I was just praying every day, like, this is your will. It's not my will. It's what you see for my life ahead. And I'm so thankful because I feel like my entire year of reign, the best part for me, April, was seeing all the children. You know, they are just enamored with anyone that has a crown or a banner. And so they listen to your message, and it's so important to be a strong role model. But I remember one little boy, and specifically, I should say, he was with his mom, and he came up and his mom said, well, that's Mrs. America. This is her year of reign. And he said, Mommy, how does she make it rain? I loved it. I'm like, that is the cutest thing I've ever heard. He thought rain, the water rain. So I'm like, oh my gosh. But that really crystallized the fact that I wanted to be a mom. And then my daughter Ariana was born the next year after I gave up my title. And she has just been the love of my life. She's 25 now, so she's very much an independent young woman. I'm very proud of her. She's a homeowner. Her mom was the agent. I got to help her. But she's doing phenomenal. But yes, it's all part. I call life just the pieces of the puzzle, right? We're just putting them all in place to see what forms. The picture's on the top of the box, but you've got to assemble what's underneath, right?
Yep. Well, and the thing I'm realizing now is, you know, sometimes we're so focused on these big goals and dreams, especially if you're a driven individual like we are, that, you know, I'm very focused on just enjoying life now. Like, I have a rooftop deck in my new townhouse, and I love to just go up there and listen to the birds and drink my coffee. I think we chatted about this online. I think you do the same on your porch, right?
Totally.
And it's like, just having those moments to pause, and my parents are coming to visit tonight, I shared with you. So I'm so excited, like to, you know, they haven't visited me since I moved to Nashville because my mom's had some health issues. And I just, you know, my family's so busy, you know, my family and everything we do, right? And we were just all together for my dad's 75th birthday. But I'm like, I miss the times that we just like went to the beach and hung out, or were at my parents' house. And I think in the world today, there's so little just like hanging out and spending time together, that those moments have become so valuable to me. And my girlfriends have become so valuable to me, talking about supporting women. So
100%. And I love what you said about, it's the things that we miss when we get older are those really simple things. 100%. Hanging out, spending quality time with family. Doesn't have to be a fancy vacation. It's just more about that time, just pulling out a puzzle, putting a puzzle together. I mean, just things that I think when we were younger specifically, I know I took for granted. You know, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so boring. What are we going driving again, you know, in the country? You know? But now I'm like, let me go back a little bit. You know, it's just amazing. I think you're 100% onto something.
yeah, it's so funny. At my parents' house, they have like a chase as part of their sofa. And like, that's my corner. So I used to go to my parents' house and just kind of crash and like, you know, watch a movie with my mom. And like, I'm like, gosh, I haven't been in my corner in a while. Like, I want to go just like sit in my corner, right? I'm sure you see that with your daughter too. I know moms love it when we feel safe around them. I know my mom loves it when I can just let my guard down and like be her daughter.
100%. Every now and then I see these little glimpses of the little girl in her, and I love it. I just relish that.
That's so beautiful. So, Cynthia, you are a successful realtor, a national TV host, and, you know, I know all of our listeners don't know you, but from what I see through social media, I know it's our highlight reel, but also I've met your husband. I know that you have a very deep, loving relationship. You talk about your daughter. I mean, it really appears that you're winning at all parts of life. So, what practices do you put in place, or what do you believe sustains you? Because sustainable success in all areas of our life is really the goal. And so many times it's difficult and we fail at that.
Excellent question. So again, strong faith is the main component of my life, and giving gratitude to God on a daily basis for, like we mentioned earlier, the small wins. I think that's so important. and I will never ever, deviate from that. I feel also communication is key. And specifically, I say that with my husband because he is so understanding of how busy, life can be. Many weekends he sacrificed with me being out with clients, and he would just wait for me to come home. And, he never tried to hold me back from anything. And he definitely doesn't do that now with traveling once a month to Arizona. I mean, it's a shift in our routine. But he balances it very well, and he knows when I'm out there, it's for an important cause. As you know, we're changing lives 30 minutes at a time with each episode. And so I come back, and I'm always thankful to be back. But it's definitely communication, the power of prayer. And honestly, April, I would say knowing when to say no. I'm also trying to get a little bit better with boundaries, and I think that there's a guest of yours that I'm going to be listening to very, very soon, because that is something that we as women just need better help with. It seems like we are people pleasers, and so we want to say yes all the time, but sometimes it's at the price of our own personal happiness or even our own fitness. If you're giving up your workout time to be somewhere that you know that you should be doing something for yourself, we need to get better about that. So I've developed a habit of saying, okay, if I really can't do something, or if I don't want to do something, then I'm going to decline the invitation. And I don't think it's called being antisocial necessarily, but I think it's self-care, because we as women need to take care of ourselves. It's about filling our own cup before we can fill others. And so I'm getting better about that.
Yeah, and one thing I used to do is, like, I was the last one to leave things. Like, I felt like I had to hang out, until the event was over. I had to be there. I was expected to be there. And it's so funny now at my Vixen Mastermind retreats, like, all the women laugh because I'm like, okay, I just hit the wall. See y'all tomorrow. Like, I just hit that wall. And I'm like, I'm done. I have to go to bed. Bye. and there's something, you have to really honor that. And I think what makes it easier for me is I want to show up as my best self to serve others. And obviously, if we're saying yes to everything, or if we're staying that extra hour that just depletes us, then we're stealing from the next day, or we're stealing from the next person we can serve. And I had this realization in my financial practice because, as you know, helping people retire, it's a very emotional endeavor. I really felt it was my job to empower them to continue living life the way they wanted, not slip into scarcity mentality, fear, and a lot of things that go on. So it's like, people ask me all the time, how long have you been coaching or consulting? I'm like, well, full time, a year, but really for 16 years, because that's what I did in my financial practice. And so I realized if I was tired, or if I was hungry, or if I was not in the best mood, then how could I be present and serve my client? And so I became what I called an energy broker. Everyone talks about time management. I'm like, okay, what activities, what sequence of activities, what do I say no to so I can show up my best? And so you mentioned boundaries. What happened for me was I got really good at doing that in my professional life because my sense of duty and responsibility. I was terrible in my personal life. So I agree. I think it's our generation. Like, we don't know how to say no. And we have this sense of responsibility, especially we women. So I know you said you've started to give yourself permission to say no, but what other steps have you done to protect yourself in this area?
So I'm really passionate about making sure that I have time to exercise. It's my release, it's my outlet. So I don't sacrifice that time, even if it means I have to get up a little bit early before my day begins, a little bit earlier. I've made that a commitment. Also, my prayer time. My prayer time and my workout time are the first things that I do in the morning. Prayer time is first. Actually, I grab my devotionals, I grab my Bible, and I feel like that sets the right tone for the day. And then I exercise, and then I'll jump in the shower and get to wherever I need to be. But even if it means getting up a little bit earlier, then I'll do that. So that's the number one thing that I did, just because I know it makes me feel better when I have control over those two things. And I think when we feel good, we present ourselves better to the world in general.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I love that. I'm very good at my prayer and meditation time first thing. I'm not as good. I love it when I do that and then I move my body. Those are the best days. But when my morning gets pinched, I do kick the exercise till later. So I have to get better at that. So hopefully you'll inspire me to do that. I love that. So, Cynthia, I know community and collaboration are very important to you. So where does this show up in your life? How do you practice these principles?
So I have a team with Compass, my real estate team.
Nice.
I'm a team lead, and I've got a group of ladies around me that are supportive and dynamic. And when I'm in Arizona, they cover more than that, even stretching outside beyond the career. What I've noticed is that by surrounding yourself with women that you admire, that encourage you, that support you, is really so amazingly crucial for happiness and for growth. They say that you're a reflection of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, and I would tend to agree with that. And so I think it's really important that we collaborate with one another, collaborate without ego, be encouraging, be loving. And I've noticed that with my support system that I have in place and all of my girlfriends. What's amazing to me, April, and you're one as well, you're my friend, there's no competition between the ladies. Like, it's all supportive. And they say, you know, a true queen is someone who helps straighten someone else's crown.
Yeah,
I 100% believe that. So if there's any negative energies around, I shy away from that. I don't get involved. I'm not one to spend time gossiping or talking about things or people that are going on in the world. I just choose to surround myself by happy, joyous things. So I would say collaboration overall. And empowering women, the one thing I always try to tell, even my female clients specifically, because I work with a lot of married couples, but I also have some females that are single in the business world. And it's totally normal to ask for an opinion on something, right? We all do if we're unsure, like, oh, let me go ask so-and-so and let me get back to you. I want to talk to so-and-so. What I have started to do is, and I remember this recently, I had one client who wanted to check with like 6 different people before making a decision. And I said, well, I think that's great, but what about listening to what you say? What is your heart telling you? What do you want to do? And she looked at me and she said, no one's ever asked me that question before. I thought that was interesting. Wow. So they're just kind of used to this person, you know, just asking all the time, but no one's asked her like, hey, well, what do you want? So I think it's important that we help encourage women find their voice. And April, you are so good at this. I mean, you really are. You're such an empowering person. You're compassionate, just your personality, everything. You're very good at asking the right questions. And I've watched you with different interviews. You draw people out, you draw people in. And it's all about finding that voice and also being a good listener, which you are.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because I like to say, actually, Dan Sullivan has a book, Wanting What I Want. And reading that book gave me permission, like, okay, I can want things. And that's actually why I started the Vixen Gathering, because I specialize in Gen X women, and usually because of responsibility and roles and how we were socialized and how we were raised, we put ourselves last. I don't even have children. I'm not even married. And I would put myself last, you know, behind my clients, my team, my family, like always taking care of everyone else. So it's not just mothers and wives who do this. And I just think that if we tap into our intuition and what we truly want, I believe that's the breadcrumbs that God shows us what our purpose is. And so if we're not understanding what we want, we're not living our true purpose on earth. And for me, that's a waste of a life. I mean, I strongly believe that. And so I love that you brought up helping women tap into what they want. And the other thing I've experienced, like I kind of cringed when you shared your client saying she was going to ask 6 other women, because my clients come to me so confused because they're listening to 10 different opinions, right? Instead of tapping into that inner knowing. And so they think they're not good at what they do, or they're not good at running a business, or they're not a good wife, but it's because of all the noise they're listening to. And when they get inside of themselves and really tap into what they want and what's important to them and their core values, then they feel more solidified. So that's amazing. We could do a whole episode talking about empowering women what they want to do what they want, especially in real estate. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I thought about selling my car recently because like I own it and I'm like, I drive this twice a month. Why do I have this expensive car? This is so dumb. Let me go like get something else. And I did not want to deal with selling my car. Like I'm an intelligent, independent woman. And I'm like, oh, these are the times I wish I had a husband to handle this. And I don't know if that's from growing up in the South or what, but I called my brother who you know, and I go, oh, what do you recommend I do? And so, you know, he walked me, he was like, I would do this, I would do this. And I'm like, okay, cool. I can do that. Great. But yeah, it's so interesting. There's certain areas that all of us just freeze in. And I think that purchasing a home, especially, you know, I did it on my own and it's a lot, especially if you're a business owner, it's a lot because they literally want you to promise your firstborn child and like take your, you know, I joke, I'm like, would you like to take my blood too? Because as a business owner to get approved for anything, like you have to like lay everything on the table, right? So I love that you specialize in helping women with that because it can be so stressful and everyone thinks like the major things are stressful, but sometimes the everyday lifetime decisions are the most stressful to do on your own.
I 100% agree. And I always cringe when I have a client that's going to bring like 6 different family members when we're looking because I just know that everyone's going to have different opinions. And it literally, April, it happens all the time. And it's not so much with the single male clients that I have, but you're right. For some reason, depending on where you were raised, or it's just maybe our wanting to be accepted by the choices we make, even when it comes to where we're purchasing a home, it's amazing how many different opinions come into play with that. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's great to have that feeling of this is the right house for you. But when it becomes a negative, and I saw that happen recently where I had a client that fell in love with a property. It literally was so perfect in every single way, except the people with her had something different to say. And then before I knew it, you know, she was like, oh, I really love it, but I'm not going to move forward because of boom, boom, boom. Sure enough, someone else grabbed it. It went under contract. So it happens a lot. It really does. It really, truly does. But yes, I totally agree. Empowering women to find their voice and also listening to the word of God, listening to the voice of God. I'm a huge advocate. I believe that he does speak to you in moments of quiet. He's directed me in times of my life where I just didn't know which way to turn. And I've given, like you said earlier, surrendering to the fact that he will guide you. He will light the path in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, that's why when I'm making decisions on where to live, I like to go places and feel it because I want to tap into my intuition is where that's how I feel God speaks to me and how I feel about a place and what I'm doing. And so I keep getting reminded of this. God wants me to remember this. So thank you for the reminder. But I just moved and I'm renting in Nashville because I moved here a year ago and the real estate market is ridiculous right now. So I'm like, I'm not going to buy a house. I don't know if I'm staying here. So I was renting in a high rise and it's exorbitant rent as well. So I'm like, okay, I need somewhere that suits my work and because I work from home, etc. Long story short, I was like, I'm going to go find a townhome to rent. And I had already applied for another one, put money down, and the realtor was on vacation, not getting back to me. And long story short, the date was coming. I was like, I need to know where I'm living. And God was like, go look. And so I was like, okay, let me see what's open this weekend. And this place that I'm in now is such a blessing. Like, I swear my landlord was giving it to me under market value. Like, they let me sign a 6-month lease. They didn't look at a thing. She was like, I looked you up on LinkedIn. You look great. I want you in my home because they own it, right? Nice. And it has a healing room that I can use for healing and prayer. It has the studio. It has the rooftop deck. And it's just, I just like
Perfect.
I'm amazed every time. I'm just like, it was such a miracle that I happened to find this place and walk in, but I know God was leading me here. I'm like, I just can't explain all the synchronicities. I was like, this was meant to be my home so I can do all these things that he wants. And, had I been hard-headed and said, well, I already applied for this place, I should stick with it, I wouldn't be in the position I am now and just have all the blessings that have come my way.
That is amazing, April. That is what I would definitely call a God wink all day long, just for you to hear the voice, go look.
Yes.
Honestly, that is amazing. It's meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And I've always played with, I was like, I want to do real estate too. I just think the joy of helping someone find their place, like home is so much more than a physical building, especially in today's world where we have so much noise, we have so many opinions, so much negativity. It really is your cocoon. So, Cynthia, I'm curious, how did you get involved in residential real estate originally?
That is a great question, April. So when we moved down from Cleveland, Ohio, we had a great experience up there with our agent. She sold our home, and I was really impressed with her. Ariana was 2 years old at the time. So we had moved down to the Charlotte area, and I knew that I wanted to be involved with everything in her life, specifically, whether it be preschool, of course, kindergarten, elementary school. And so it seemed to me to be a good fit, that I could be a mom and I could be room mom and on the PTO and still have a career. And so when I first started here in Charlotte all those years ago, I didn't know the area specifically. And so I thought this is a great way for me to learn it. It's going to force me to get out there and to learn it. And so my first client was actually someone that I worked with in Cleveland. She had moved down here, and she reached out to me because she was having trouble selling her home. She was going to pull it from the agent that she was with and give me a shot at it. And that was my very first listing. And so it was a great learning experience for me because wet behind the ears and just stepping into a new career. Like I said, Ariana was 2 years old. And in fact, we were in Disney World when that home went under contract. I'm like, oh my gosh, we have an offer. Now what do I do? What in the world? Where's my broker in charge? Please help me with this. We're in Disney World. It was so funny. And so from that transaction, as Ariana grew, my business grew as well. And so when she went off to college, she went to NC State, I was lost without her, to be honest with you. And so I did a head dive back into real estate and really built my business like crazy because I felt like I needed something to do that was really going to fill the days. And so my schedule being so much around her schedule with school, even in high school, I wanted to be home in the morning with her. I wanted to be the first person she saw when she came home. And so I tailored my hours around her. And then all of a sudden she was gone. And so I was able to really kind of spread my wings and dive into it, if you will.
I love that. And it's a great reminder that there are seasons to our life. And, many women listening own their business or they're solopreneurs or they have a side gig. And I think that's the power of owning your own business and is that you can design it around your life. And as you said, when it was your priority to be a mom and be there, you had your business designed. And then when that kind of void opened up, you could fill it with your business and something you love. And so thank you for mentioning that. I have a number of friends who are experiencing the first time empty nest syndrome, and it's real. It really can throw women off their game. And I think it's something not talked about enough.
I could not agree more, April. It does throw you off your game because you spend your life 18 years at a time, really, when you think about it, nurturing this beautiful little person, and they're there and they need you. And when there's something wrong, they come to you and they're crying and you hold them. It doesn't matter how old they are. And then all of a sudden, you're forced to just drop them off at this school, this college, and you wave goodbye. And I remember coming back home from Raleigh to Charlotte and I'm crying because I'm like, I just left my daughter at school, and when am I going to see her again? When's she coming home? When's the parents' weekend? Because I got to get there like right now. Right? So it was such a feeling of loneliness and emptiness. That's the first thing that I felt, was just that feeling of, oh my gosh, wow, this is lonely and empty. Whereas some parents were like, hey, we can't wait. Now we're going to go to all the concerts we want to go to. And I'm like, what are you talking
Right.
about? This is the worst day ever, you know.
Oh my gosh. I was the oldest, and I remember when I went to college, like my parents were like, okay, we're dropping you off. They told us we should drop you off and leave immediately. We don't want to, but this is what we're gonna, I mean, obviously they helped me move in, but like Vanderbilt, where I went to college, was like, pretty much told the parents, like, move them in and leave. Like, do not hang around. Yes. And of course, I'm excited to go to college, so you have no idea what it feels like for your parents. But no, I've been through it with a couple of my girlfriends recently, and it really just, I mean, even like leading to depression in some cases. And so the reason I mention it is I think it's important to talk about so many of the issues that pertain to women. I mean, just like postpartum just became a big deal. And, recently we're talking about this. I mean, I'm 48 and no one ever told me about perimenopause. And I'm like, oh, that's what's going on? Okay. Why didn't anyone tell me this? Right? Like, it's like my new favorite topic. I'm like, oh, let me learn more about this. But it's so crazy. I just think it's so important. And that's where it comes back to having good girlfriends and good support system, because find someone who's been through what you've been through. Your journey's not going to be the same, but it validates and helps you get through. So when you had the empty nest syndrome, I know that you blossomed your career, but what other steps did you take to like feel whole as a woman again?
I'm still not. I still miss her every day, April.
Oh, that's so sweet.
No, again, the power of prayer, like really diving in, getting involved more in my church. I volunteered in children's ministry, and that helped me a ton. I know that sounds crazy, but holding other people's children that were small, like 3 and 4 years old, kind of brought that feeling of having her in my arms when she was younger. So I had a lot of blessings from being in children's ministry for a little bit. Definitely the faith and just holding, friends together that had Ariana's, obviously her circle of friends, like the moms. We would get together for lunch and we would make sure that we were staying in touch with each other. Most people had still younger siblings at home, but I'm also, part of my life is I divorced from Ariana's father, remarried Anthony, who you see now on social media. We've been together 11 years married, but I have 2 stepchildren, but they didn't live with us. So they were always with their mom, and they were with us every other weekend. So when they were with us every other weekend, then it was like, do you guys want chocolate chip cookies? Like, let's just bake them from scratch. I mean, it was like... It was just incredible. But yes, making sure that you're surrounded by people going through the same thing, especially women. I mean, it's just so important, because you do get through it together. And you mentioned perimenopause, April. Yes, same thing. And now I'm in menopause itself. And it's like, whoa. So you have to talk to people that have even gone through that. Because I'm like, is this normal? Because now I'm feeling that. Is that supposed to be? Is this part of menopause? The forgetfulness is my thing right now. I mean, I remembered that we had 12:30 today.
Good.
There's a win. But it's crazy because it's like, oh my gosh, what is going on?
Well, and for me, I've gained some weight, and I'm like, I used to be very good at managing it and taking it off. Like, I would just go through periods, and I'm like, okay, what is going on? Like, nothing is working, right? And I'm just like, and even I went and got a massage, and the masseuse was like, oh my gosh, you're so toned. But it's like I have this layer of fluff over the muscle, and I'm like, no, I have to get rid of the fluff. What's going on? But I've
never seen fluff on you.
Thank you. But I have
never seen fluff on you ever.
That's so funny. I have, well, when I'm 30 pounds heavier than I was normally. So, I mean, that's a big deal. Luckily, I'm 5'7", so it's not that bad. But I have a new girlfriend who's like an integrative wellness coach. And she was like, oh yeah, because you lose a pound of muscle, like every, whatever the science is past age 35. And so you have to increase your protein intake, and this is how you should be exercising. And I was like, oh, okay, so there's an answer. Cool. But if I just kept doing what worked in my 20s and 30s, I mean, I would have continued to be frustrated, right? And so and that was just us talking as girlfriends. And then I'm like, oh, great. Can I hire you to help me with this? I would love that. I just think these conversations are so important. And it's so important that we as women open up and share what we're struggling with. Just like here, when you're like, I don't think that. Oh, yeah, but you know what? I don't fit in my wardrobe. It makes my life inconvenient. Like, I want convenience so I can travel and enjoy life. So it's important to me. Just like you said, we have to want what we want, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So I love it. We got a little off tangent, but one thing I would love to dive into with you, Cynthia, is I know we've talking about collaboration and community. And I think it's so important for women in business. And you shared how you have a supportive team around you. I loved when you talked about when you're out of town, they step in and handle. And, you know, that didn't used to be the case. There was a lot of competition among women in business. So I'd love to, and we may have some women listening saying, hey, that's not my experience. So what are the actions you feel you took or the mindset you had, or maybe it's showing compassion? What do you think built this community around you? Because we really are mirrors. Our community is a reflection of what we're putting out, right?
So I think overall, April, I would say if you asked anyone in the real estate industry, for the most part, they would say Cynthia is a positive, happy person. She's the agent that we want to work with. And that's always the way that I've ran my business. I don't believe in ever talking negatively about another agent. I mean, ever. It doesn't matter if I know a situation or what have you that happened with another client or a listing. I will never, ever say anything because I believe that what we put out in the world comes back to us, right? I mean, so always being encouraging, and that attracts a lot of the same type of personalities. And so I've been very blessed with my team that I have now. Women that work really well together, that support one another. Like I'll reach out to someone on my team and say, hey, Julie, can you show so-and-so a property? I'll, compensate you for your time. And she's like, I don't want anything. I just love helping you. And I think, you know what, that's really amazing because that is such a serving, knit, close group that we have. And that's how I believe every day. Like I wake up and I think, okay, how can I be a blessing in someone's life today? Where can I be the light? Where can I fill that need? And I think when you approach each day like that, people kind of, they migrate towards you. So I have not seen a lot of competition come my way in a negative way. I mean, I feel like, of course, when it comes to a listing, everybody wants the opportunity to go in there and to win the listing. But I've been really blessed. And I've heard some horror stories from other agents, I'm not going to lie, where they've heard things or they've said things about other people. And I'm like, no, that's just, I don't know. I've not had that experience. I've been very fortunate.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, Cynthia, as we wrap up, I always like to talk about our feminine energy, and I think you have beautiful feminine energy. Obviously, you can swing into your masculine because you get stuff done. But what I'd love to ask you is, when do you feel your most feminine? Like, when do you feel your feminine energy flowing?
Wow, that is a beautiful question. And I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. I think for me, gardening